In the year 2287, the Galactic Council had cataloged over 4,000 intelligent species across the known universe. 4,000 species, each one unique, each one dangerous in their own way. The Vorkai hunted in packs of thousands, stripping planets bare within days. The Devorian Empire had conquered over 60 star systems in 2 centuries. The Krath were born soldiers, their young trained to fight before they could even speak. And then there were humans, small, soft, fragile-looking. 2 arms, 2 legs, no armor plating, no claws, no venom, no natural weapons of any kind. And yet, every species in the known galaxy had learned one thing very quickly after humans joined the Galactic Council. You do not push a human twice. Nobody knew why. Not really. Not until the day Ambassador Zixara decided to ask. Zixara was old, even by Valori standards. He had lived through 11 wars, watched 3 civilizations collapse, and personally negotiated peace treaties that lasted centuries. He had seen everything, or so he thought. He tapped 4 of his 6 fingers nervously on the crystal table as the council chamber filled with representatives from across the galaxy. The chamber itself was enormous, a floating station orbiting a dying red star, built 10,000 years ago by a civilization that no longer existed. Its walls were transparent, showing the infinite black of space beyond. Stars glittered like cold eyes watching everything below. Today's agenda had only one item: Earth. The humans, Zixara began, his translator chip converting his clicks into standard galactic, have been members of this council for exactly 30 years today. He paused, letting that number settle over the room. In those 30 years, they have never declared war. Not once. Not a single military action. Not a single first strike. Not even a border dispute that escalated beyond words. Silence. The kind of silence that meant everyone was thinking the same thing, but nobody wanted to say it first. Ambassador Kreeth of the Devorian Empire leaned forward slowly, her silver scales catching the light. She was beautiful in the way that predators are beautiful. Dangerous. Precise. That is highly unusual, she said carefully. Unusual? Zixara pulled up a holographic display above the table. In those same 30 years, the Valori fought 11 wars. The Devorians fought 7 campaigns. Even the Lumari, the most peaceful species we know, had 3 border conflicts. He expanded the display to show Earth's file. It glowed soft blue. 0 wars declared, 0 invasions launched, 0 first strikes recorded, 0 retaliatory strikes on record. They have been provoked, Zixara continued, 14 times by my count. Border violations, resource theft, 2 incidents involving the deaths of their citizens. He looked around the room. Every single time, they responded with diplomacy, with words, with negotiation. General Mothka of the Krath had been silent until now. He was massive even by Krath standards. Gray armored skin, 4 arms, eyes like black stone set deep in a face built for war. He laughed, a sound like boulders grinding together. They are weak, he growled, slamming one of his massive fists on the crystal table hard enough to crack it. I have studied their soldiers, watched their military exercises. They are small, they are slow. They feel pain like prey animals. They avoid war because they are afraid. Several representatives nodded slowly. We should test them, Mothka continued, leaning forward. A small incident, a border patrol that goes slightly too far. See exactly how the great humans respond to real pressure. The room was quiet again. Nobody agreed out loud, but nobody disagreed either. The doors to the chamber slid open. She walked in quietly. No announcement, no escort, no ceremonial armor or weapons or banners. Just a woman, Commander Sarah Chen, Earth's senior representative to the Galactic Council. By human standards, she was considered old, gray streaks running through her black hair, lines at the corners of her dark eyes. She was small even by human measurements, thin, unarmed. She had heard everything from the corridor outside. "Forgive my lateness," she said simply, taking her seat at the human section of the table. Her voice was calm, unhurried, like someone who had all the time in the world. General Mothka stared at her the way a predator stares at something it has not yet decided whether to eat. "Human," he said slowly. "We were just discussing your civilization's interesting habit of avoiding conflict." Sarah Chen looked at him. Just looked. She did not smile. She did not frown. She simply looked at him with those dark, quiet eyes. And something in that look made General Mothka's translator, Chip, struggle to identify what it was seeing. It was not fear, that much was certain. It was not anger either. It was something else entirely, something older than both of those things. Something that had been alive in human eyes for 100,000 years before they ever looked up at the stars. Mothka found, to his great annoyance, that he could not hold her gaze. "We don't avoid war because we're afraid, General," Sarah said at last. Her voice was still soft, still completely calm. "We avoid war because we remember what happens when we don't." She stood up and walked slowly to the holographic display. With one finger, she changed Earth's file. The soft blue glow turned deep red. The room went very still. Data file. Earth. Historical records. Pre-galactic contact. Total armed conflicts recorded more than 10,000. Total casualties across all conflicts, 1.2 billion. Nuclear weapons developed, 15,000 warheads. Biological weapons programs, classified. Chemical weapons programs, classified. Directed energy weapons, classified. Current status of all weapons programs, voluntarily decommissioned upon first contact with Galactic Council. Nobody spoke. Zixara stared at the numbers. He had lived through 11 wars. His people had suffered greatly, but 1.2 billion. "We are a violent species," Sarah said quietly, still looking at the display. "We have always been violent. For most of our history, we solved our problems with weapons, with blood, with destruction." She turned to face the room. "We were very, very good at it." She let that settle for a moment. The nuclear weapons alone could have ended all life on our planet 17 times over. We built them anyway. We pointed them at each other anyway. We came within minutes of using them, more than once. She walked back to her seat slowly. "We didn't stop because we ran out of enemies. We didn't stop because we became too weak to fight. We stopped because we looked at what we had built, what we were capable of doing to each other and to our world, and we made a choice." She sat down. "A very hard choice. The hardest thing our species has ever done." She looked at General Mothka one more time. "We chose to be better." The general said nothing. For the first time in his long military career, he found he had nothing to say. 3 weeks after that council meeting, the incident happened. A Krath border patrol operating near the Kepler-7 system opened fire on a human civilian cargo vessel without warning. The ship was called the Meridian Star. It was carrying medical supplies to a human colony on Kepler 7c. 17 crew members, 12 men, 5 women. The youngest was 19 years old. The oldest was 62. None of them survived. The Krath Patrol commander filed it as a navigational error, a tragic misunderstanding. These things happen in the vastness of space. The Galactic Council held its breath. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The test General Mothka had been hoping for. How would the humans respond? There was talk of war preparations. Emergency council sessions were called. Species across the galaxy quietly began choosing sides, calculating distances, assessing their own military readiness. Everyone waited for the human fleet to appear. Instead, a message arrived. Just a message. It read, "To the Krath Empire. We are aware of the incident at Kepler 7. We have recovered the flight recorder from the wreckage of the Meridian star. We have reviewed the data. We know what happened. We know it was not an accident. We are formally requesting a response from the Krath Empire within 72 hours. We ask for a full explanation, a formal acknowledgement of responsibility, and fair compensation for the families of our 17 crew members. We hope this matter can be resolved through peaceful dialogue. We genuinely, sincerely hope that. But we want to be completely clear about one thing. We will not ask twice." General Mothka read the message 3 times. Then he laughed. "Words," he said, shaking his massive head. "They send us words. After we destroyed their ship, after we killed their people, they send us a politely worded message." His officers laughed with him. The 72 hours began. Hour 1, hour 12, hour 24. Nothing from the Krath, no response, no acknowledgement. Hour 48, hour 60, hour 72. Silence. On the 73rd hour, every Krath military scanner in the Kepler sector activated simultaneously. Not one contact, not 10, 417 vessels. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel in absolute perfect formation. Silent, precise, like they had rehearsed this moment 10,000 times. One ship appeared directly above every single Krath military installation in the sector. Supply depots, communication arrays, shipyards, forward bases, all of them covered simultaneously. No weapons were powered up, no targeting systems were activated, no threatening communications were broadcast. They simply appeared and waited. General Mothka stared at his scanner screens. His 4 hands were completely still. His officers were silent around him. 417 ships. He had not known the humans had 417 ships. Nobody had known. And then the communication channel opened. Every screen in every Krath facility in the sector showed the same face. Commander Sarah Chen. She looked exactly as she had in the council chamber. Calm, quiet, those dark eyes giving nothing away. She said 4 words. "We asked once, nothing else." The silence that followed lasted 4 minutes and 11 seconds. Then the Krath Empire issued a full and complete formal apology, accepted full responsibility for the destruction of the Meridian star, agreed to full compensation for the families of all 17 crew members. General Mothka was quietly relieved of his command the following day. Not a single weapon had been fired. Not a single life had been lost. Not a single act of war had been committed. But every species watching from across the galaxy had finally understood something that day. Something that changed how they thought about humans forever. Humans did not avoid war because they were weak. Humans did not avoid war because they were afraid. Humans avoided war because they remembered with every cell in their bodies exactly what they were capable of, what their history had made them, what lived just beneath that calm diplomatic surface. And they had chosen every single day not to let it out. But it was there. It had always been there, waiting. And that is why, in 30 years of Galactic Council membership, no species had ever pushed humanity a second time. Not one. The question was never whether humans could fight. The question was whether anything in the galaxy could survive it if they did. What happens when one civilization is finally foolish enough to find out? After the Kepler 7 incident, everything changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, not the way wars change things. It changed quietly. The way the universe changes when a truth everyone suspected finally gets spoken. Humans were not weak. Humans had never been weak. And now, everyone knew it. For 2 years, the galaxy was unusually peaceful. Border disputes resolved faster. Trade agreements signed within weeks. Species on the edge of conflict quietly stepped back. Nobody talked about why. Nobody needed to. 417 ships, no weapons fired. 4 minutes and 11 seconds. But memories fade, and there is always someone who thinks they are the exception. His name was High Commander Velcor of the Sarathi Dominion. The Sarathi were new to the Galactic Council, only 8 years as members. Young, ambitious, deeply convinced of their own superiority. 4 homeworlds, 3,000 warships, technology 2 generations ahead of the galactic average. They had never lost a war, not once, in 400 years. Velcor studied the Kepler 7 incident carefully, very carefully, and he reached a different conclusion than everyone else. The humans got lucky, he told his admirals. The Krath were unprepared, surprised. If Mothka had simply opened fire, he let that thought hang in the air. The humans have not fought a real war in over a century. They have forgotten what it feels like. Power without the will to use it is nothing. He looked around the room, and humans do not have the will. The first move was subtle. A Sarathi trade vessel began operating in human-controlled space near the Proxima colony. Nothing aggressive, just present, testing boundaries. The humans noticed immediately. They sent a polite communication, friendly even, reminding the Sarathi vessel that the sector required prior authorization for commercial traffic. The Sarathi vessel acknowledged and stayed exactly where it was. 3 more Sarathi ships appeared the following week, then 10, then 30. Each time the humans sent communications, each time the Sarathi acknowledged politely and did nothing. At the Galactic Council, Ambassador Sarah Chen watched the situation develop with the same quiet, unreadable expression she always wore. Zixara sat beside her, his 6 fingers tapping nervously. "You should respond more firmly," he said quietly, "before this escalates." Sarah looked at him. "We are responding," she said simply. "With words?" Zixara said. "Again?" "Yes," Sarah said, "again." Zixara stared at her. "And if words are not enough, the Sarathi are not the Krath. Velcor is not Mothka. He has studied you. He believes you will not act." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "Everyone believes that," she said finally, "right up until we do." Meanwhile, High Commander Velcor escalated further. 30 ships became 100. 100 became 300. And then, on a quiet Tuesday morning in the Proxima colony, 300 Sarathi warships moved to completely surround the human settlement. No weapons fired, no demands made, just surrounding, watching, waiting. It was, Velcor believed, a perfect mirror of what the humans had done to the Krath. A show of force, a demonstration of power, a message without words. He fully expected the humans to respond the way the Krath had, with immediate capitulation, with apologies, with negotiation. He waited for Sarah Chen's calm face to appear on his communication screen. He was already planning what terms to demand. What he got instead was silence, complete silence. For 6 hours, nothing happened. No human communication, no fleet movement on his scanners, no emergency council sessions, nothing. Velcor smiled. "You see," he told his admirals, "they are paralyzed. They do not know how to respond to a direct challenge. All their reputation built on one incident with an unprepared enemy. His scanner officer said nothing. She was staring at her screen. "Sir," she said quietly, "I am reading anomalies." "What kind of anomalies?" "Gravitational readings, multiple points, across the entire sector." Valcor frowned. "Ships dropping out of faster than light travel?" "No, sir," she said. Her voice had gone very still. "The readings are too large for ships." What appeared around the Sarathi fleet was not what anyone expected. Not warships, not fighters, not the 417 vessel formation that had become legend after Kepler 7. What appeared were stations. 12 orbital defense platforms, each one the size of a small moon, dropping silently into position around the entire Proxima system. They had been there all along, Valcor realized with a cold shock. Cloaked, waiting, already in position before his fleet had even arrived. The humans had known he was coming. They had known, and they had let him come anyway. And then the ships appeared. Not 417 this time. 2,144 vessels, every class, every size. Arranged in a formation so precise it looked like mathematics made physical, surrounding not just his fleet, surrounding his fleet, his supply lines, his communication relays, his nearest fleet base, and 3 of his 4 homeworlds simultaneously. Valcor could not speak. His admirals could not speak. The scanner officer who had first noticed the anomalies was completely still, staring at readings that made no tactical sense. The humans should not have had this many ships. The intelligence reports had been clear. The estimates had been carefully calculated. Every single estimate had been wrong. And then the communication channel opened. Sarah Chen looked exactly the same as she always did. Calm, quiet, dark eyes giving nothing away. Gray streaks in her black hair, no armor, no weapons visible. She looked, Valcor thought, with a distant part of his mind that was still functioning, like someone who had done this before. Many times before. Someone for whom this was not a crisis or a confrontation, just a Tuesday. "Hi, Commander Valcor," she said. Her voice was exactly as soft as it always was. "I want to be honest with you, because I think you deserve honesty." She paused. "We have been watching you since your first vessel entered our space. We read your intelligence assessments. We know what conclusions you reached about us, and we understand why you reached them." Another pause. "You were not wrong to study us. You were not wrong to question our reputation. Skepticism is healthy. Testing assumptions is wise." Her eyes were very steady. "But I need you to understand something now. Something that I hope you will carry with you for the rest of your life, however long that may be. We are not the Krath. We did not react slowly because we were afraid or unprepared. We waited 6 hours because we wanted to give you every possible opportunity to reconsider. We wanted to be absolutely certain that you understood what was happening before we responded." She leaned forward very slightly. "This is us responding." The silence that followed lasted a long time. When Valcor finally found his voice, it came out smaller than he intended. "What are your terms?" Sarah Chen was quiet for a moment. "Full withdrawal from human space within 24 hours. A formal acknowledgement that the Proxima sector is sovereign human territory. And one more thing." "What?" Valcor asked. "Go home," she said simply. "Tell your people what you saw today. Tell them exactly what happened. Tell them what we showed you." She paused one final time. "Because the next commander who decides to test us will not get 6 hours." The Sarathi fleet began withdrawing within minutes. It took 19 minutes and 47 seconds for complete withdrawal, a new record. At the Galactic Council, Zixara sat very still for a long time after the reports came in. Then he turned to the empty seat where Sarah Chen usually sat. She had not come to the council chambers today. She had been busy. How long? He asked one of the human staff members quietly. How long had those platforms been cloaked there? The staff member considered the question carefully. The Proxima platforms? She said. Those specific ones? She thought for a moment. About 60 years, I think. Zixara stared at her. We built them during the Cold War period, she explained pleasantly. Before galactic contact, when we were still worried about each other. She smiled. We never got around to taking them down. Zixara looked back at the empty seat. He thought about the 1.2 billion casualties, the 15,000 nuclear weapons, 10,000 wars fought before humanity ever looked up at the stars. He thought about a species that had spent 100,000 years learning, in the most brutal way possible, exactly how to survive. And he thought about the choice Sarah Chen had described in that council chamber 2 years ago. The hard choice, the deliberate choice. We chose to be better, not because they had forgotten what they were, but because they remembered. Every single day, they remembered. What happens when the Galactic Council itself begins to fear humanity?
There is a moment in the history of every great civilization when the rest of the galaxy stops seeing them as a member and starts seeing them as a threat. For humanity, that moment came quietly, as most important moments do. It began with a question asked in a private session of the Galactic Council. A session with no official record, no transcript, no witnesses except the representatives themselves. Ambassador Zixara of the Valori asked it. He had been thinking about it for a long time. Since the Kepler 7 incident, since the Sarathi withdrawal, since the night he had learned that orbital defense, platforms the size of small moons had been sitting, cloaked around Proxima colony for 60 years. 60 years, built during a human civil conflict. Before they had even known other species existed, just waiting. He looked around the private chamber at the other representatives. Kreeth of the Devorians, Ambassador Paul of the Lamari, 7 others from species spread across the galaxy. All of them had come when he called. All of them had the same look in their eyes. The question, Zixara said carefully, is not whether humanity is dangerous. He paused. The question is what we do about it. The room was very quiet. Kreeth's silver scales shifted slowly. They have broken no laws, violated no treaties. Every action they have taken has been, technically, defensive. Technically, Paul of the Lumari repeated softly. The Lumari were the most peaceful species in the known galaxy. They had not fought a war in 3,000 years. 60 years ago, they built weapons platforms the size of moons and cloaked them near a civilian colony. To protect the colony, Kreeth said. Yes, Paul agreed. To protect it from each other. Before they knew we existed. He looked around the room. What are they building now? What have they built in the 30 years since joining this council that we do not know about? Nobody answered. Because nobody knew, and that was exactly the problem. Sarah Chen found out about the private meeting 3 days later. She always found out. That was one of the things other species never quite understood about human diplomats. They seem to know things they should not know. Hear conversations that happened behind closed doors. Anticipate moves before they were made. It was not magic. It was not technology. It was simply experience. 10,000 years of politics, of war, of betrayal and alliance, and the endless complicated dance of civilizations trying to coexist. Humans had been doing this to each other for their entire history. Reading other species was by comparison almost easy. She requested a formal meeting with Zixara. He looked uncomfortable when she walked in, which told her everything she needed to know about how the private session had gone. You know, he said. It was not a question. I know, she confirmed, taking a seat across from him. He was quiet for a moment. Then are you angry? Sarah considered the question seriously. No, she said finally. I understand it. If our positions were reversed, If one of your species had the history we have, the capabilities we have, and we knew as little about your intentions as you know about ours, she paused, we would have called that same meeting. Zixara stared at her. That does not concern you? Being feared? Being feared is not the problem, Sarah said. Being feared and misunderstood is the problem. She folded her hands on the table. So let me help with the misunderstanding. Zixara waited. You want to know what we have built, Sarah said. What weapons? What platforms? What capabilities? We have developed in 30 years that the Council does not know about. Yes, Zixara said quietly. Sarah nodded slowly. I will show you, she said. Everything. Complete transparency. Full access to every human military installation, every defense system, every weapons program active or inactive. She met his eyes. On one condition. What condition? You come yourself, she said. Not a representative. Not an observer team. You personally. Because what I am going to show you is not something I want filtered through a report. Zixara was quiet for a long time. When? He asked finally. Tomorrow, Sarah said. What Zixara saw over the next 7 days changed him completely. Not because humanity was more powerful than he had feared, but because of what they had done with that power. Sarah took him everywhere. No restrictions. No carefully prepared tours designed to show only the best parts. She showed him the weapons platforms, yes, all of them. There were more than he had imagined. Far more. Spread across human space in a network so comprehensive that any attack on any human world would face an immediate, overwhelming response within minutes. She showed him the research facilities, technologies that were not weapons, medical advances that had extended human lifespan by decades, environmental systems that had restored 3 planets humans had nearly destroyed in their pre-contact era, energy sources that could power entire civilizations without cost. She showed him the archives. This was the part that stayed with Zixara longest. Deep in a facility on Earth's moon, humans kept the complete recorded history of their wars. Every conflict, every casualty, every atrocity committed by every side, preserved in perfect detail, made available to every human child as part of their education. Not hidden, not minimized, not reframed as glorious, just remembered, exactly as it happened. Why? Zixara asked, standing in a vast hall where holographic records stretched as far as he could see. Why preserve all of this? Why show your children the worst things your species has done? Sarah stood beside him looking at the records. Because we learned something, she said quietly. The hard way, over thousands of years of learning it wrong first. She was quiet for a moment. Civilizations that forget their worst moments. Repeat them. The ones that hide their history from their children. That make the darkness sound like something that could never happen again. That tell themselves they are past all of that now. She shook her head slightly. They are the most dangerous ones. Because they have no immunity. No memory of how it starts. No recognition of the warning signs. She turned to look at Zixara directly. We remember everything. Every war. Every mistake. Every time we were absolutely certain we were right and turned out to be catastrophically wrong. Her voice was very steady. That is why we have all those weapons platforms and have never used them on another species. That is why we have the most powerful military in the known galaxy and spend more on medicine and environmental restoration than on soldiers. She paused. We are not peaceful because we are weak. We are not restrained because we lack capability. We are careful because we know exactly what careless looks like. Zixara was silent for a very long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Something had shifted in it. Something old and tired had been replaced by something that had no name in his language. When you showed me the platforms, he said slowly, the weapons programs, the capabilities, I was afraid. I will admit that. I know, Sarah said. But now, he looked around the archive hall, at 10,000 years of remembered mistakes. Now I'm not afraid of what you might do.
He looked at her.
Now I am afraid that something might happen to you. Sarah Chen looked at him for a long moment. Then for the first time in all the years Zixara had known her, she smiled. It was a small smile, tired and old and full of things that had no words. That, she said quietly, is why we built the platforms. Back at the Galactic Council, Zixara addressed the private group again. He told them what he had seen. All of it. He did not minimize the weapons or the capabilities. He described them exactly. And then he told them about the archive. When he finished, the room was completely silent. Paul of the Lumari spoke first. "They remember," he said softly. "Everything. Everything," Zixara confirmed. Another long silence. Then Kreeth of the Devorians, who had fought 7 military campaigns and never once questioned whether any of them were right, said something that surprised everyone in the room. "I would like to see the archive," she said quietly. Zixara looked at her. "I think," he said slowly, "that is exactly what Sarah Chen was hoping you would say. What happens when the galaxy's most feared civilization asks humanity for help?" The Galactic Council had existed for 10,000 years. 10,000 years of wars prevented, civilization saved, species brought back from the edge of extinction through diplomacy, negotiation, and the slow, painful work of learning to coexist. In 10,000 years, the Council had never asked anyone for help. Until now, the Draven had no warning. That was the first thing every species noted when the reports came in. The Draven were not a minor civilization. They were not unprepared. They had 12 homeworlds, a fleet that rivaled the Devorian Empire at its peak, and a history of military conquest stretching back 800 years. They had absorbed 43 civilizations in that time, some by force, some by economic pressure, some simply by making it clear that resistance was not a viable option. The 44th civilization on their list was a small species called the Ithori. The Ithori had 2 worlds, a population of 3 billion, technology that was, by most measures, 2 generations behind the galactic average. They had been members of the Galactic Council for only 11 years. They had nothing the Draven wanted except their location. Their 2 worlds sat at the intersection of 3 major trade routes. Whoever controlled those routes controlled commerce across an entire sector. The Draven sent their fleet first, 40 warships surrounding the Ithori homeworld. Then came the message, simple, direct. Surrender your world governance to Draven administration within 72 hours, or we will take it by force. The Ithori sent one communication to the Galactic Council. It said only, "Please help us." The emergency session was the most tense. Zixara had attended in 40 years of council membership. Species argued, factions formed. Some wanted immediate military response, others warned of escalation. The Devorians pointed out that engaging the Draven fleet directly would mean war, with a civilization that had never been defeated in 800 years. For 6 hours, nothing was decided. Then Sarah Chen spoke. She had been silent the entire session, sitting in her usual place, watching, listening, with those dark, quiet eyes that never seemed to miss anything. When she finally stood, the room went still immediately. It always did. "The Ithori asked for help," she said simply. "The Council exists to provide help. The question of whether we are capable of providing it," she paused, "is not actually a question." Ambassador Kreeth leaned forward. "You are proposing that humanity intervenes directly." "I am proposing," Sarah said, "that the Council intervenes with human support." She looked around the room. "This is not a human problem. It is a Council problem. We will not solve it alone, but we will not stand aside while a Council member is destroyed because we could not agree in time." The vote took 11 minutes. It passed. What happened next was studied in military academies across the galaxy for the next 200 years, not because of the scale of the response, because of the precision. The Draven fleet commander, whose name was Voth, received no warning. One moment his 40 warships were in position around the Ithori homeworld, countdown to the 72-hour deadline ticking towards 0. The next moment, they were surrounded, not by a human fleet, by a joint council force. Ships from 14 different species flying in formation together, something that had never happened before in the history of the Galactic Council. At the center of the formation, positioned directly between the Draven fleet and the Ithori homeworld, were 11 human vessels. Just 11. Voth stared at his scanner readings. 40 against 11. Against a joint force that was still heavily outnumbered by his fleet overall. He opened a communication channel. The face that appeared was not Sarah Chen. It was a young human, male, short dark hair, a scar along his jaw. He wore the insignia of a fleet commander but looked, by human standards, extremely young. He could not have been more than 35 years old. He looked almost relaxed, Fleet Commander Voth, the young human said pleasantly. I am Commander James, Okafor of the Human Protocol Fleet. I wanted to introduce myself before we begin. Voth stared at him. Before you begin what? Explaining your options, Okafor said. He pulled up a holographic display that appeared on every Draven screen simultaneously without Voth's permission. It showed the Draven fleet's position, their fuel levels, their supply lines back to Draven space, the location of every Draven military installation within 4 sectors. All of it perfect, real time. You have 40 ships, Okafor said pleasantly. We have 11 human vessels and our council allies. You are correct that you outnumber us. He smiled slightly. I want to be completely transparent with you about what those 11 ships are capable of, so that you can make a fully informed decision. He paused. Each of our vessels is carrying enough firepower to crack a moon. Not damage, not disable, crack. We tested it last year on a dead rock in the outer rim. Took about 40 seconds. Another pause. Your ships have excellent hull plating. I reviewed the specifications this morning. Against our weapons payload, that plating will hold for approximately 6 seconds. The Draven fleet went completely silent. Now, Okafor continued, still in exactly the same pleasant tone. I want to be clear. We do not want to do that. None of us want that. The Council does not want that. I personally would very much prefer to go home, tonight having resolved this peacefully. He looked directly at Hoth, but the authority asked for help, and we came, and we will not leave until they are safe. He folded his hands. So your options? You can withdraw now, return to Draven space, and we will consider this matter closed. No record filed. No sanctions. No consequences. A simple misunderstanding between neighbors, he paused. Or you can choose not to withdraw. In which case, I will have to stop being pleasant. Another pause. I'm much better at pleasant. Voth withdrew. All 40 ships. Within 20 minutes. The fastest military withdrawal the Council had ever recorded, beating even the Sarathi's 19 minutes and 47 seconds. The authority sent a message to the Council afterward. Just 2 words. Thank you. At the debrief session, Ambassador Zixara asked Commander Okafor one question. The firepower you described, he said carefully. Cracking a moon in 40 seconds. Was that true? Okafor considered the question for a moment. We did test something in the outer rim last year, he said. That is not what I asked, Zixara said. Okafor smiled. It was a small smile, calm and old and full of things that had no words. Zixara had seen that smile before, on Sarah Chen's face, in the archive hall on Earth's moon. Ambassador, Okafor said quietly. With respect, some questions are more useful unasked. He stood, nodded politely, and left the room. Zixara sat very still for a long time afterward, thinking about a species that had spent 100,000 years, learning exactly how dangerous the universe could be, and exactly how dangerous they could be in return, and who had chosen every single day to be something better than that. Not because they had forgotten what they were, but because they remembered what happens when the Draven decide that 40 ships was not enough. The Draven did not accept defeat gracefully. No civilization that had never lost ever did. For 3 months after Commander Okafor's 11 ships sent 40 Draven warships retreating home, the Draven High Council met in closed session. Analysts were brought in. Intelligence reports were reviewed. The recordings of the confrontation were watched hundreds of times. They studied every second of it. The holographic display that appeared on their screens without permission, the calm voice listing their fuel levels and supply lines, the smile that never quite reached Commander Okafor's eyes, cracking a moon in 40 seconds. That line was discussed the most. Some believed it, some did not. The Draven Science Division ran calculations for 6 weeks trying to determine if such a weapon was theoretically possible. Their conclusion was uncertain. And uncertainty, for a civilization that had absorbed 43 others through absolute confidence in its own superiority, was a new and deeply uncomfortable feeling. High Commander Drace, who had replaced the disgraced Voth, stood before the High Council and presented his plan. We were surprised, he said simply. That will not happen again. We did not know what we were facing. Now we do. He pulled up the intelligence files on human military capability. Everything the Draven had been able to gather in 3 months of intensive research. They have superior weapons technology. Their ships are faster than ours. Their formation tactics are exceptional. He paused. But they are 11 worlds against our 12. Their fleet, even with Council allies, is smaller than ours at full mobilization. And most importantly, he looked around the room. They do not start wars. He let that sit for a moment. They respond to threats. They protect others. They negotiate first, always. He smiled slowly. So we will not give them anything to respond to. We will not threaten the authority again. We will not make demands. We will not send fleets. He pulled up a new display. We will simply move. The Draven plan was elegant in its simplicity. No fleet movements. No threats. No ultimatums. Just quiet, steady economic pressure. Trade routes redirected around Ithori space. Supply agreements with neighboring species quietly cancelled. Diplomatic relationships subtly restructured, so that the Ithori found themselves increasingly isolated. Unable to buy what they needed. Unable to sell what they produced. Slow, patient, almost invisible. It would take years. But the result would be the same. The authority would have no choice but to accept Draven administration, not because of military force, but because of simple, grinding economic reality. There was nothing the Galactic Council could technically object to. No law was being broken. No treaty violated, just commerce, just business decisions. Drace was proud of it. He was still proud of it 6 weeks later when Sarah Chen requested a formal meeting with the Draven High Council. She arrived alone. No escort, no security team, no other council representatives. Just Sarah Chen, looking exactly as she always did. Calm, quiet, gray streaks in her black hair, dark eyes that gave nothing away. Drace had reviewed her file extensively. He believed he understood her. She sat across from the full High Council, 12 of the most powerful figures in Draven civilization, and she looked comfortable. That was the first thing that made Drace uneasy. High Commander Drace, she said pleasantly. Thank you for meeting with me. Ambassador Chen, he replied carefully. I confess I am curious what brings you here. The Draven have done nothing that violates any council agreement. No, Sarah agreed. You have not. A pause. What you are doing to the authority is not illegal, she continued. It is not a treaty violation. You are correct about that. She folded her hands on the table. I am not here to accuse you of anything. Drace watched her carefully. Then why are you here? Sarah was quiet for a moment. I am here, she said, because I want to give you the same thing I give everyone. A clear understanding of the situation before it develops. Further, she met his eyes. Humanity has been watching the Draven for a very long time. Since long before the authority situation. Since long before your first fleet appeared in council space. She paused. We know what you are. We know what you have done to 43 civilizations. We know exactly how this particular strategy ends if it is allowed to continue. Her voice remained completely calm. And I want to be honest with you, High Commander, because I think honesty serves everyone better than pretending. She looked at him steadily. We will not allow it to continue. Drace felt something cold move through him. You said yourself we have violated nothing, he said carefully. Yes, Sarah agreed. Which is why I am here talking to you. Instead of sending Commander Okafor, she paused. There is still time for a different outcome. Drace did not take the warning. He had studied humans carefully. He knew they did not start wars. He knew they responded to direct threats and direct aggression. What he was doing was neither. He believed Sarah Chen was bluffing. He was wrong. What happened over the following 3 weeks was not a military action. It was something the Draven had no word for. Human traders appeared in every system the Draven had, quietly cut off from the Ithuri. Better prices, better supply agreements, more reliable shipping routes. Things the Draven had withdrawn, replaced overnight, as if the Draven had never been involved at all. Human diplomatic teams visited. Every species the Draven had been quietly pressuring to isolate the authority. Not with threats, not with demands. With simple, straightforward conversations about long-term partnerships and mutual benefit. Within 2 weeks, every trade route the Draven had redirected was running again. Through different hands, on better terms. The Draven economic strategy collapsed without a single ship moving. And then the final piece arrived. A comprehensive public report, distributed simultaneously to every member of the Galactic Council and every major news network across known space, documenting in precise detail exactly what the Draven had been doing to the Authority. Every redirected route, every cancelled agreement, every quiet diplomatic pressure point, all of it named, dated, sourced. The report was authored by the Human Protocol Diplomatic Division. It ended with a single paragraph. The Draven Dominion has demonstrated a consistent pattern of behavior towards smaller civilizations spanning 800 years and 43 absorbed species. The Galactic Council is formally invited to review the attached historical documentation and determine whether continued Draven membership serves the Council's founding purpose. Humanity does not advocate for any specific outcome. We simply believe that informed decisions require complete information. The Draven High Council emergency session lasted 19 hours. When it ended, High Commander Dreas submitted his formal resignation. His replacement sent a communication to Sarah Chen the following morning. It was brief. We would like to discuss the terms of a new relationship with the Galactic Council and with humanity. Sarah Chen read the message once. Then she wrote back 2 words. Come tomorrow. At the Galactic Council, Zixara found her afterward, standing at the transparent wall of the chamber, looking out at the stars. You knew he would not listen, Zixara said. When you went to meet him, you already knew. Yes, Sarah said simply. Then why go at all? She was quiet for a long moment. Because the offer has to be real, she said finally. Every time. It cannot just be a step in a plan. It has to be a genuine offer of a different outcome, she paused. They have to know we tried, and we have to know we tried. Zixara stood beside her, looking at the stars. You are a very strange species, he said softly. Sarah smiled. That small, tired, ancient smile. Yes, she said. We really are. The Draven were not the last. They were never the last. But every species that came after them had access to the same records, the same history, the same pattern. Nobody pushed humanity twice, and slowly across the centuries something shifted in the galaxy. Not because humanity conquered anyone, not because they threatened or demanded or destroyed, but because they remembered. And because they kept choosing every single day to be something better, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Subscribe to Human Protocol. The story of humanity is only just beginning.